The Bible was composed by many different authors in many different ways, and one of the aspects of the Bible that I find most interesting are cryptographic metaphorical stories. Sometimes the meanings of these stories are a bit obscure, sometimes the stories are more obvious. Take, for example, Revelations chapter 17, the story of the Whore of Babylon. This is a cryptographic metaphorical story derived in part from interpretations of Daniel chapter 7. However, underneath the metaphorical story lies some very real events and characters. The Whore of Babylon, as represented in chapter 17 of Revelations, is an allegory of Rome, a very real city, and the beast she rides on has 7 heads and 10 horns. Revelation says that the 7 heads have 2 meanings. First, it's a reference to 7 hills. This was a part of Roman identity, and the 7 hills of Rome were well known throughout Roman mythology and history. The second reference is to 7 kings, 5 that are dead, 1 that is, and 1 that shall be. The beast itself is an 8th king, which supposedly is the return of a king, and the 10 horns are a depiction of 10 future kings, so essentially we're talking about 18 kings altogether, though it could be 17 kings if we're assuming that one of the original 5 dead kings is also the 8th king. Now, before I complicate this story any further, I would like to break down the kings. There are only a few kings that have any importance in this entire story. First and most importantly is the king who is. This is the 6th king, and if it is compared to a list of Roman emperors, and if Julius Caesar is included, the 6th emperor is Nero, and there are a few indications that Revelation 17 is indeed speaking of Nero as the 6th king. First is its description of the 7th king. Revelation 17:10 states that the 7th king must reign for only a little while. After the death of Nero, there were 4 people competing for emperor of Rome within the next year. The Roman Empire essentially entered into a short period of internal struggle and chaos. This internal struggle of the 7th king was lifted when Vespasian finally came into power in 69 AD. Based on a list of emperors, it appears that Vespasian was king number 8. Otho, Galba, and Vitalis are combined into king number 7, and Nero is king number 6. Another indicator of Nero's claim as king number 6 comes in verse 16. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. This ruin and fire is probably an allusion to the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. This was a very important, controversial, and well-known event. The controversy mostly comes after the event because Nero had a very large complex built on the burned out area. Essentially, rumors began to spread that Nero himself had lit the fires of Rome in order to build this complex. Compounding this controversy, the Roman historian and senator Tacitus recorded that Nero blamed the Christians and had them purged. The fire and the subsequent controversy seem to add credence to Revelation 17:6. I saw the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. Indeed, Rome had gorged itself with the blood of Christians, and of course, Nero, the king who is, was fully responsible for this blood feast. It also should be pointed out that between 66 and 70 CE, the area of Judea revolted against Rome. This would eventually lead to the Romans laying siege to Jerusalem and eventually destroying the city in 70 CE under Emperor Vespasian. Jewish and Christian authors had no love for the Roman Empire at this time, and there is no reason to believe that Christian or Jewish authors would depict the Roman Empire in any kind of positive light. And there are 2 other allegories in this chapter that I'd like to point out. First, the Whore of Babylon is said to be one who sits by many waters. This appears to be an allusion to 2 things. Revelation 17:15 states that the waters are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The allegory of sitting by many waters appears to not only be a reference to diverse groups of people, but also to physical boundaries. By 43 AD, the Romans had already invaded Britain. Physically, their empire did indeed border on many bodies of water. The other allusion is to the 10 horns or 10 kings. These are supposedly future kings. After Vespasian, the Roman Empire stabilized a bit and the kings list becomes a bit clearer. Titus, Domitian, Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, Lucius Verus, Marcus Aurelius, and Commodus make up the next 9 kings. The 10th and final king alluded to by Revelations is a bit of a gray area. After Commodus, just like the period after Nero, Rome plunged into chaos again as 5 people vied for the title of emperor in 193 CE. Whoever wrote Revelation 17 appears to have had knowledge of the Roman emperors at least until 193 CE. The 10th emperor was probably Septimus Severus. He brought stability back to the empire and reigned between 193 CE and 211 CE. Of course, the reign of Septimus Severus would also mark the beginning of a very slow, somewhat chaotic decline of the Western Roman Empire. The stability of Rome's previous emperors was replaced with multiple forces competing for power and loyalties. Now, there are some gray areas, and one interesting possibility is that the author does not know of the chaos between Nero, and that he gets Vespasian and Nero confused. The reason why I mention this is that Titus, the king after Vespasian, only ruled for 2 years. Obviously, this would constitute a short amount of time. However, if the author did not know of the chaos of Nero, but did know of the chaos after Commodus, then Pertinax and Didius Julianus can be added to the king's list, and Septimus Severus still ends up being king number 10. Another possibility is that the author counted someone who was not typically considered an emperor, and that Commodus is king number 10. After Commodus, Rome was plunged into a short stint of political chaos. On the other hand, if the author's knowledge of the Roman emperors was spotty, the identity of the final king of Rome in Revelation 17 gets vague. Of course, being vague was a particularly important goal of this author, so there shouldn't be any surprise there. The Whore of Babylon is an allegory to real events. It's written in a cryptographic, metaphorical manner that gives the illusion of prophecy. Had the author said what was really on his mind in a clear and concise manner, Revelation 17 would look something like this, and no one would have paid attention. It is a very interesting story, and it does provide a bit of insight into what Christian and Jewish authors thought of the Roman Empire, but it doesn't actually refer to anything else. With the reign of Septimus Severus, the chapter ends, and so does the story.